watching on YouTube, hello, my name's Gav. I am a storyteller. That is what I do. If I tell that to young people, they go, okay. And if I tell that to grown-ups, they sometimes say, what does that mean? I think the clue's in the title, but I think what they mean is that a job? I think it might be. And I'm here with Tell Me Your Story with Helen Jeffery. Helen Jeffery, oh my goodness me, the list, the poet, playwright, facilitator. You've been known to perform. You're, an educator. Helen, tell me your story. What is it that you do, first of all?
I literally do, as you said, a little bit of everything. I think it's called a portfolio career, isn't it? So, yeah, I am ostensibly a writer, and it's taken me quite a long time to be able to say that as well, which I'm sure we'll probably talk about, and a performer and a director and a maker of theatre and performance and a show-off is probably the best way of putting it, really. I was a teacher for many, many years, which I think is probably the biggest performance of all, isn't it? So, yeah, and I do lots of workshops with lots of different groups, from children, older people, and I love it. I really enjoy the work that I do with different communities.
I would like to pick up on something you said, because I think it's a theme that's come back with the other conversations with other creatives.
Yeah.
Is why do we struggle to give ourselves the title, the name? Some of us, anyway.
Yeah.
Why do we struggle to identify as the thing we are? Why is it that there was a little bump in the road when you said you called yourself a writer?
Yeah, I think it's perhaps like measure what do you measure your success by? Um, you know, it's interesting because somebody said to me the other day when I gave them my poetry pamphlet, and they were like, "Oh, look at you, a published poet," and I felt like going, "Not really," because I kind of self-published. So actually, maybe I'm not a real poet. So there's that. I think it's like if you're not in the mainstream and perhaps you're not kind of selling books in WH Smith's, you kind of feel that maybe you don't deserve that title of writer, which actually is rubbish. And all of the workshops I do with people, I say to them, you are all writers. Do you write? You are all writers. Yeah. When you smoke, were you a smoker? Yes, you were. Yeah, you didn't hesitate to call yourself a smoker when you smoked. So you are a writer when you write. So, yeah.
You are a writer. I have your book. And I think also the notion that self-publishing is a lesser thing. I mean, of course, this whole endeavor of creativity starts with that sense of the self, that self-belief. But when in your portfolio, what do you decide you're going to be on a day? Let's say, we're both freelancers. There's
Yeah.
always a million things we should be doing. But how do you decide, well, today I'm going to be the poet, or today I'm going to be the playwright?
I'm probably many things on many days, to be honest. Unless I'm working on like a show. So like I was rehearsing for Buckled recently, which was a play that I had on tour.
Tell us about that in a minute. Yeah, tell us about that.
I
I
will.
want to
So
hear all about Buckled.
for those 2 weeks when, I'm in preparation for that show and then the show is on the road, I am director. That's it. Because I'm in the room with those actors and I'm directing them. We're going to theatres and I am in charge of speaking to the technical team about the lighting and sound and everything else. And I don't have the capacity to be anything else when something like a show is going on. But when I'm at home on my own, any one of those hats might go on in a day. So on my website, which I have just built this week, it actually sort of breaks it down and it says all the different things that I do. And, and I don't think that's anything to be embarrassed about, really, because some people say, well, what are you, jack of all trade, master of none? But I'm like, no, I'm just master of all trades.
I'll put the link in, but what's the website?
It's just www.helenjeffrey, all lowercase.com.
Oh, .com, no less. You've gone international.
Yeah. Yeah.
So writer, director, creative facilitator. Now, just dwelling a little bit, you like me, you have a background in teaching.
Yeah,
That was secondary teaching,
yeah,
like
yeah.
myself. Yeah. What now you're in this freelance world? Um, how people say for teachers, oh, that's very transferable, very transferable. What
Mm.
have you brought from teaching into this new world of Helen Jeffery, writer, director, creative facilitator?
I think the ability to think on your feet continuously, isn't it? And to improvise. So, I'll turn up at, say, a workshop that I'm running and they'll have nothing. They'll have said that, you can have this, this, and this, and it's not there. And then this has happened and this can't happen. And, something happened in December. So, without naming names, a very famous writer was due to turn up and deliver a writing workshop. This primary school had turned up to this library and were waiting for this very, very famous writer to turn up. And they couldn't get hold of him. And literally, the lady from the library went, "You used to be a teacher, didn't you?" And I was like, "Yes." And she was like, "Could you just do a workshop for these 25 kids?" And I was like, "No problem." So I just said, "Have you got your pens and paper?" And off we went. So I think it's just that ability to not be fazed by groups of children wherever I am. And to be a bit silly, really, as well. I think, there's not enough silliness in the world. And, me being able to moonwalk has saved many a difficult situation. So, yeah.
Right. Okay. I'm adding that to my list of things to research, because the reason I'm having these conversations with people, and I know you a little bit, and I know your work, and you are, incredibly impressive and tenacious, and you have that drive. But I'm not a person. We talked little bit earlier, and I described myself. I think I've had a revelation. I don't think I'm an imaginative person. I think I'm a creative person. I
Yeah.
think I can ready, steady, cook. Give me that's a very old reference, but give me the rattle bag of elements, and I'll make
Yeah.
connection and make something out of it. But I really struggle having those initial ideas. I struggle with a blank page. I know that you run, and I'd like to hear about them as well. Lots of courses and workshops for adults
Mm.
as well as children. So, what's your top tips for just getting going, getting things out of your head?
Well, the best thing to do is, like I say to any group I work with, you don't go for, well, I don't go for a run anyway, but you don't want to go to a run or go to the gym without warming up. So you've got to warm up. So the best thing is free writing. You just pick up your pen and your piece of paper, and you just say, for 5 minutes, I'm going to write whatever comes into my head. And even if that's, this is stupid, I don't know what I'm writing. Was that somebody at the door? Oh, there's a cat there. You literally just write whatever comes into your head. And sometimes that can just be the spark of an idea. And I've done that loads with people. And they go, "Oh, that's really interesting." So you don't censor yourself. You're not allowed to take your pen off the paper and stop writing. So even if you're just writing and, I don't like this, I don't like this, I don't like this. Oh, I'm hungry. It's a start. And I think for many of us, we type all the time as well now. So actually the physical act of writing with a pen is very mindful, and it's quite a different experience, I think, to sitting and typing. So things like that, little sort of warm up starter exercises all the time. I like describe your journey here. Tell me what you ate for your breakfast in as much detail as you can, and write that down. If you're a biscuit, what would you be? Just sort of silly things, really, to make people feel comfortable.
And then, so getting a bit specific, and I know it's a big part of your work, and I know you talk about it publicly. Tell me about the content of Buckled and why that was
Yeah.
important.
So Buckled was a piece I started to think about writing about 6 years ago. And it was when I was contemplating loosely stopping drinking, because I think I knew deep down that I was sort of skirting on the edges of perhaps having a problem. Like a lot of people, lockdown, I think it was 2020, drinking too much. And then I just put it to one side for about 18 months. And then I finally did stop drinking on January the 1st, 2021. And once I'd been sober for 18 months and felt kind of strong enough in my sobriety, I thought, right, now is the time to write the show. And I'd always wanted to write a show that asks a question. And I always start, at the heart of whatever I'm writing for stage with a question. And the question for Buckled was, how do you navigate sobriety in a world that revolves around drinking? So it wasn't a play about not drinking, it was a play about navigating the experience of not drinking, and what that's like when everybody else is, and you're not. So that's kind of what the piece was about. So it was based around three characters who were not me, but some of the experiences of navigating sobriety did obviously come from my own. So that kind of made it probably more truthful or resonate with people, because when we performed it this time round, I had quite a lot of interesting conversations with people after the show who were like, you can tell that you've experienced it. It was so truthful and so personal. And that's what you want. I think it's about connection for me. I think anything that I write or perform is about making a connection with others in some way.
Okay, so you've converted that. You combine your teaching background, and you've got your tricks for starting, and you've got this content behind you, and you're running a course, an online course.
Yeah, so I started running workshops, sober scribbles workshops last year.
That's it.
And therefore, anybody who is either sober or not drinking or thinking about not drinking or just wanting to change their relationship with alcohol, really, just a sober space to come together, because a lot of poetry workshops and poetry events happen to take place in pubs. And that can be quite problematic, obviously, for people who are trying not to drink. So I started to run the workshops in dry bars or places where alcohol wasn't the focus. And I've done them in different venues and online as well. So it's just, a space where people can come together. But you don't have to be sober, but just you can't be drinking in the workshops, if that makes sense. So I run one-off workshops periodically, and they're on different subjects. So like we might be doing poetry or flash fiction or something like that. But then I started to do a course, and the course is an introduction to playwriting. And it's one that I've led in person before. This time I've refined it, and I've kind of structured it into 6 1.5 hour sessions online. And it seems to have gone well. So it's kind of like refining I do love a good old lesson plan. So it's like refining it. I've got my resources, I've got my scripts ready to share, have my little register. And yeah, the feedback's been good. So I'm doing it again. It starts again next week. It's almost sold out again. There's just one place left on it, which is fantastic. And then in the autumn term, I'm going to run an Introduction to Playwriting 2, which will be for anybody that's done Playwriting 1, which will be about 30 people by then. And then that will be a deeper dive. That will look into, because this was the basics. So the one that's starting next week, where there's one place left, that's, we're looking at things like how to format a script, how to create a character. What do we mean when we talk about different types of voice? Whether we're talking about a character-driven voice or we're talking about a neutral voice, and looking at kind of plot. What's the difference between plot and story? Should we use stage directions, and how should we use those? So they're kind of the fundamentals, if you like. And then in Playwriting 2, we do a deeper dive, and we'll be looking at things like, world building, text and subtext, playing around with form. And the idea is that we will work towards, with the group, creating 10-minute scripts that hopefully in January we'll be able to share. I'm hoping to do a little takeover somewhere at one of the theatres in Liverpool, and give people the chance to see their work up on its feet, because that's what's different about playwriting. It is meant to be seen, it's meant to be read, it's meant to be put in front of a live audience. And I think that's why I've always preferred to call myself a spoken word artist than a poet, probably, because I don't write things just for the page. I write things to be listened to. I write things to be heard. And I like to look in an audience's eyes as I say them, So it's about that connection again. Yeah.
That's really interesting, because it builds on previous conversations. Everybody's mentioned having a community,
Yeah.
having a place to share, a place, whether it be writing groups or collectives, a place to throw an idea out and see what the response is. But it's very different, isn't it, if you're and I'm thinking of performers and storytellers and poets where you don't know, you can't you have to be there, don't you? You have to be in
Yeah.
front of a live audience. I think sometimes if you write something, maybe you can hand a chapter over and have somebody come back. But if you're a poet and you're a performance poet, a spoken word artist,
Mhm.
then you don't know how it lands until you push it out there.
Yeah.
How do you cope with that as a as a writer? Are you always thinking, "Oh, this is for speaking out loud," or do you have pieces that are just for the page?
Oh, I have some pieces that are just for me and that will never be shared either, and that's the cathartic side of writing, where, I use writing to help me manage the mess that's going on in here. But yeah, I have pieces that are performative, most definitely. So I'm going to do a piece for you hopefully later today
Please.
that is definitely performative. So I come at it with a performer hat on. Um, Whereas I think I like to hope people could actually read my poems though and still get a lot from just reading them. But the joy for me comes in the performance of them as well. I think that's what I love. I think I possibly love the performing of them more than the writing of them. Maybe I don't know. It's probably the combination of the two.
And what's wrong with that? That's wrong. I mean, it
Yeah,
is goes back to that. I'm very, very awkward about and apologetic about everything. But then you put me in front of an audience, and I become the monstrous version of
yeah,
myself, which is what people I think I am. But anyway, but yeah. The somebody yesterday texted me some advice on storytelling, and a third of the advice was about how you speak, and the rest was
yes.
about eye contact and looking and the tricks, I suppose. So are you what do you need to have in place? Where do you work? Are you one of these people that can just, oh, I've got 5 minutes, I can sit and work? Or do you need to have done 1,000 things and lined up your pens? Uh,
No, I have. It's very different, right? With a poem, this is going to sound really strange. I never make a decision to write a poem. The poem will write itself. It will come to me in my head, probably over a number of weeks, but sometimes instantaneously. So, like one poem that I wrote on the train and I wrote about the events that were happening in front of me. And it was such an urgent piece, and it was quite a dangerous situation that was happening. And I was just like, keep my head down and write this down. And it sort of turned into a poem. So that's one extreme example. Otherwise, it's scrawlings in a notebook, but they're already in here. So if you said to me, like, sit down and write a poem about love, I'd be like, oh, I don't really want to do that. I mean, I have been commissioned to write poems before, and I have to say, I don't really enjoy being commissioned because I feel there's a pressure there. Sorry, I love being commissioned, I should be saying to people. God, why did I say that? No, I enjoy the challenge of being commissioned, but I sometimes struggle with the fact that there's a brief to follow. And I'm not always very good at following a brief. I tend to go a little bit off piste. So yeah. And I like the way words sound for me, which you'll hear in the one that I'm gonna do. I was born in Wallasey. Mum and dad are from Liverpool and from the Wirral. We moved to Wales when I was 8. I was brought up listening to language and words and sounds and two of the best accents, which is Scouse and North Wales, I think. And it's so singy songy and I just love it. And I just think that in Liverpool, more than any other city, you just sit on a train or in a cafe and the material's coming to you. I'm not having to do anything. I'll write it down. I can turn it into a play. So I'm surrounded by inspiration. That was a homework I set people on my playwriting course to go and sit in a cafe at a bus stop or anywhere where there's people and just jot down what people are saying because it's beautiful and you'll get the characters there and the idiosyncrasies, the person that goes, right, right. Do you know what I mean? And it's just brilliant.
Well, why don't we go for a poem if that's okay, and then we can
Yes.
hear that in play. I mean, there's
Yeah,
no
yeah.
pressure on you. The Wirral Liverpool North Walian combination is apparently the best. So let's hear. No,
Okay.
the lyrical nature of it
The
all.
lyricalness. Yeah, I'm going to have to divert my eyes that way. So,
All right.
okay. This one is called Saesneg, which I'll explain at the end. Across the Mersey, we migrated to a green and pleasant land where winters were slate, grey, bleak, and rain unrelenting. Come spring, though, all was anew. Fields full of golden daffodils, promises of heaven, ya, as scuff-kneed and freckled we ran free over fields, past sheep and lambs and paddled in the Elwy. Yn ysgol we learned Cydadrodd, our mouths opening and closing like tiny birds. The words were dense, soup-like, yet I was enchanted by sing-song sounds and rolling vowels, leaping and soaring sky-high across the divide. Locals blanked me to speak in a language they thought I would not know. A teacher called me Saesneg, singled me out as often as he could. Did he think I might forget I carried undertones of Scouse? He never learned my name, spitting out Saesneg as if it was bitter. I studied R.S. Thomas over Austin, and yet the meanness of the minority lingered. I left as soon as I could. Never missed the town in which I fell in love. Cried heartbreak tears, smoked, choked, found out what men were all about. Now, though, I look back fondly on a place that has stood still and remember how I sang "Ma hen gwlad fy nghadau yn anwyli mi," as if I had Welsh blood running through my veins. Thank you.
Thank you
Diolch yn fawr
so
iawn.
much. What an absolute privilege to have that performed. Thank you. What does it mean, Saesneg?
English.
Interesting. Because, of course, for the Scots, the word is Sassenach.
Yes.
Sassenach. So we're both in Merseyside. We're both in Liverpool environs. And, of course, very much, I think, in the shorthand, Liverpool is connected to lyricism and poetry and song and music. And then I think also to a rebel heart, but also I think the connection is then extended to Ireland because, of course, it's a port city. But the roots of Liverpool are very rooted in Wales, aren't they?
Yeah.
They're very. So I know that the Eisteddfod, which I think something we in England miss out on massively, used to be held in Liverpool, didn't it, in the 20th century? And it was seen as an outpost.
I talked about like Cydadrodd in the poem, and Cydadrodd is the choral speaking that they teach you in Wales, from start, from knee high. So, at the age of 8, I was taught, I still remember the poems that we were taught, and we had to perform them like, really, really, it was extremely performative. And I can still recite them, can still remember them. Yeah. To this day. Yeah.
I think there's a real value to that. I think we perhaps don't necessarily have, I suppose I'm English, a cultural identity the way that other British communities, even international British communities have. We don't have, which I think Liverpool has, of course.
Well, Liverpool say, don't they? I'm not English, I'm Scouse, and it's it's very much like it's its own language almost. And I think there's a real pride there. And I think obviously it's the same with North Wales as well. But it was just sad that at the time that we went there, it was a campaign to keep Wales Welsh, keep the English out. And what was happening in Liverpool at the time, I'm talking about the early 80s, was that factories were closing, we were under Thatcher. And, people were migrating to North Wales to go, to the opportunities that were happening there, which is what happened with my family. So, we went there because of my dad's work. But yeah, we weren't welcomed with open arms. And, it was quite difficult for me sometimes to walk into a shop and they would start speaking Welsh. So I learned Welsh. And I wanted to fit in at that age. You do, don't you? You wanted to fit in. So, that horrible teacher, Mr. Jones, who called me Saesneg, maybe he helped build my character. Who knows?
Well, I think that's a very generous perspective on what sounds like an awful human being. Well, but how much do you carry of that in your writing today, in your work today? How much do you link to that immersion in a cultural education that you had?
Sorry, Gav, you froze on me then, so got nothing except you
That's
had.
all right. Right. So, so there's you talk about a cultural education that you had, which is specifically Wales. Almost specifically North Walian.
Yeah.
How much of that informs your creativity today?
Um, I think just how important performance was, and as I said, we did dancing and singing in school, and it was just so important. And I don't know whether that would have been the same if I'd have grown up in England. I don't know, because everything was focused around the Eisteddfod every year and preparing for that. And the Welsh do love to sing. So yeah, I'm sure it actually did have a much bigger impact on me than I thought. And I love to go back to Denbigh now. My mum still lives there, and it's a gorgeous little market town. But when I was 16, 18, I just wanted to be in the big city and
In
bright
the big
lights. And
city like Chester. Uh,
yeah, like Shrewsbury. No, I actually went to Warwick Uni, which is in Coventry, if you don't know that. So yeah, it was very exciting for me.
yes,
But of course, poor students nowadays can't even afford to live away from home, can they? So I feel like we perhaps were the very last people. I don't know about you, Gav, but I got a full grant to go to university.
I did. I did.
Very, very lucky. I was the first person in my family to go to university.
Yes.
And I felt very proud of that, and my family did as well. So yeah, I'm very grateful actually. Growing up at the time I did, in the late 80s, early 90s it was privilege actually, I think.
Good. I think it's quite funny that the 80s seem to be coming back culturally as things do.
Yeah.
I don't remember it. That I was never one of the cool kids, so I was not into the
Did you
cool
have though?
music.
Did you have fluorescent socks?
No,
Oh, Gav. Gav, did you not wear drainpipe jeans and fluorescent socks?
no,
No.
no. I was very much the teen at C&A. Now, but it runs into my question, which I like to ask. I'm very much anti the phrase guilty pleasures.
Yes.
I think anything cultural that brings you comfort and is a
Yeah.
safe place, whether it be a book, a poem, a song, an artist, a film, television, whatever it is, the place that we return to, we read again and again. What are your
Mhm.
comfort spaces when it comes to cultural offers?
I think that I just love discovering new sitcoms and things. And I've got a 13-year-old son. So we're having so much fun at the moment, going back and watching things. So Gavin and Stacey, I mean, I just love it. It's like a big warm hug. Um, Absolutely love Gavin and Stacey. We're rewatching that. We've just done The Big Bang Theory, Friends, anything like that where I can just sit and there are, 12 series to get through. And it's just like, how many of these can I absorb in one go? But the other one is, and this is really, probably a bit embarrassing, Sex in the City. Love a bit of Sex in the City. Really do. And always fancied myself as a bit of a Samantha. If you know, not Miranda, even though I've got the red hair. So I'm not going to say too much about that because if you do know the show, you'll know what Samantha was like. Yeah. But
Yeah,
I
I do.
was always Samantha in the group of friends. Yeah.
Okay, that's good. I think of the shows you mentioned there, I'd probably be Gunther from Friends. That's it, you
Yeah.
know. So just someone fading into the background. But yeah, it is interesting now that we can binge. We can do this binge watching this because, of
Yeah.
course, things were relatively. I mean, I'm definitely older than you, but things unless you grabbed it on VHS. You
Yeah.
didn't get to see it again. And that's why
Yeah.
I really love social media. I've found a TikTok strand that's showing a very obscure early 80s Channel 4 comedy show I was obsessed with. And of course, I've never seen again. And they're
Yeah.
releasing it. And I'm just devouring it. There's a bit of nostalgia. It was Who Dares Wins.
I was
Was the
just
show.
talking with my dad tonight. He stayed with me for a bit, and we started to talk about Mork and Mindy.
Oh,
You know,
Nanu, Nanu.
absolutely love Mork and Mindy.
Yeah.
And I think
Sunday
we were saying that,
afternoons.
Yeah, there's so much choice now. It's almost a bit overwhelming. I have to have a folder on my phone that says things to watch, or I just get panicky. I'm like, I don't know what there is.
We've
Yeah,
got my son and I have a son who's slightly older than yours. We have one of those stick-on memos for the fridge, and if there's something we want to watch, we write it on that, and
yeah,
then if like, what shall we watch? Look at the list,
yeah.
because yeah, you kind of be drowned in choice. Uh,
We got a couple of comments, Gav. I know Josie in the
I've
chat
not
has said
seen
that.
any comments. I'm so
Okay, well,
sorry.
we've had a couple. Josie said she started a rewatch of Modern Family, and that is not one I know, Josie. So I'm going to have to check that out.
Oh, it's a
And then,
cracker.
is it Modern Family? And then
Yeah.
somebody else put, and I can't see that one at the moment, but what about a Frankie Says Relax t-shirt? Absolutely. You were
They're
nobody unless you had a Frankie Says Relax
They're
t-shirt.
back. They're back
Yeah,
big style. I'm so sorry. I think we're on early stages of Substack video. I don't have any indication that there's anybody here, and have no access to the comments. So I'm really glad that you do, and I've got it open in a couple of places. So
yeah,
as we draw to a close, if there are any specific questions for you, Helen, from people watching, that would be absolutely brilliant. But what have you got coming up? So you've got the course, the introduction to playwriting.
yeah. Got one place left on the one starting next week. So if you want to grab that, that's on my website. And then I'm also doing a workshop on the 4th of June, which is called From Page to Stage. And that's for anybody who's got an idea for a play and just kind of thinks, right, how do I actually get it on at a theatre? Because I think, that can be very, very challenging self-producing. But I think once you've done it and you've worked your way around it, it's very liberating because it means that you have the power to create your own show and try and get it out there. So yeah, that's for anybody who'd like to do that. So that's on the 4th of June. Yeah, and apart from that, I've just in a very fortunate position this year to have been given a DYCP last year, which is Arts Council funding to develop my practice as a writer. So I'm becoming the student. I'm working with a couple of great writers this year to develop my writing skills. And I'm starting to learn how to write for television, which, wow, is a different beast altogether.
Oh, that's exciting. That's
Yeah.
exciting. Very. Yeah. Well, I'm endlessly impressed with you, Helen. I think you're one of the most positive, supportive, dynamic, creative people that I know. Honestly, when our paths cross, it's an absolute delight. Has Buckled got more legs in it, I hope?
I hope so, Gav. I mean, it
Yeah.
really is. I thought, we just about managed to pull the tour together without funding this year.
Amazing.
Without bankrupting myself. But yeah, next year I really want to try and get, I want to get it out there beyond the Northwest. So yeah, we'll see. I'm not quite ready to put it to bed yet.
No, it doesn't feel. It feels like it's just
Yeah.
going. Now, again, I can't see any conversation, so
Well, Claire's
apologies.
put, what biscuit am I? Which obviously is brilliant, Claire, because it means you've been listening right from the beginning. So thank you for that. Do you know what, Claire? If I were not following this ridiculous FODMAP diet that I'm on at the moment, which is no gluten and no dairy, I'd be a great big chunky chocolate chip something,
A
just
great
wiggling.
big crunchy hobnob.
Something chocolatey. Yeah, yeah. What biscuit would you be, Claire? You've got to put that into the chat now as well. No,
What
please
biscuit
don't let
would I
I hope
be?
nobody. I think you would be, Gab. Well, I don't know. I just hope nobody was going to be like a fig roll or anything disappointing like that, or a nice biscuit. Ooh,
I like
yeah.
both of
I like
those.
though. No!
I was going to say malted milk dipped in cold milk.
Gav, that's so lame. I'm going to shame you for your
I'm
biscuit.
very Protestant when
Right.
it comes to my biscuit. Okay. Um.
Um,
Thank you
thank
so
you
much,
so
and
much.
I wish you just the best and
Yeah,
continued luck.
continue.
We've got a bit of a feedback.
But,
It is always exciting on Substack. There's something technical. But
um, but
Helen,
Helen,
anything you want to say?
anything you
I'll
want
put
to say?
links.
I'll link.
Anything you want to say to anybody who's been watching before I
All right.
boot you on
Well,
your journey?
me, Josie, and Claire are just like bonding over biscuits. So we're bonding over soft and chewy cookies stuffed with chocolate, gluten free. Yeah, it's yeah. So I think apart from that, just follow me. Yeah, follow me on my socials. Helen Jeffery 01. And yeah, and just stay in touch with me. That'd be great.
You're an absolute champion in every sense of the word. Thank you, Helen, for your time.
Oh, thanks, Gav.
See you.
Bye-bye. See you soon.
Ah, there we go. As I say, I can't see you if you're here. I do apologise. I think it's the quirky nature of Substack. Josie, if you're still here, you to me would be a gluten-free pink wafer. I will not extrapolate upon that at this time. Next week, the next 2 weeks I have bookings and more on the way. Dickie Benson, who's currently following Morrissey on tour in America. He's an author of Morrissey. Books about Morrissey. He's a PR guru, and also writes. And then 2 weeks' time, Sita Brand, CEO, entrepreneur, storyteller, international renown and traveler. So can't wait for those conversations and others to follow. Thank you so much. If you've enjoyed this conversation, please tell somebody. Obviously, it goes onto Substack. It will also go onto my YouTube. You can find me there. I do silly things on the internet. I read ghost stories, if you like a supernatural story or two, and I'm mucking about with a classic book at the minute. I'm using it to get out and about, myth boasting with this. If you know this book, we are already friends. Right. Thank you so much. I can't see you to say thank you if you type anything. This is the book I'm reading at the minute from the genius that is Robin Ince. Normally weird, weirdly normal. My adventures in neurodiversity. I've never seen how parts of my brain work written down with such clarity as I'm seeing in this. Right. Be nice for you to tell me your story. Please comment afterwards. I'll be able to see that. In the meantime, I'm going to go and make myself a biscuit brew cup of tea. And I think somewhere in the house there's a packet of custard creams. My day is made. Thank you.